Hello, my name is Alexa, and I would like to welcome you to the Weird, Wacky, Wonderful Stories podcast, one of my favorite shows, featuring Shelly and Bella. Now sit back, relax, and enjoy the show.
Hey everybody, and welcome to episode 60 of the Weird, Wacky and Wonderful Stories podcast.
What the hell was that?
I just felt like singing because of our new environment.
Oh, yes, our new studio.
Yes, we are in our new studio, so hopefully this sounds really good to you. If it doesn't, it was all for nothing.
Yes, and we spent a lot of money on home not improvement.
I think it's an improvement.
Yeah, I like it.
Check our social media or follow us on Facebook and have a look at some of the photos that we put up of our new working space.
Our working space. It's more like volunteer space. Because we don't get any money for this.
No, it's costing us a bloody fortune. Yeah.
Yep, it was a hobby that turned into a...
blood-sucking, money-sucking...
sucker?
soul-pinching...
sucker.
life-sucking sucker.
So, what have we got in store for our wonderful listeners today?
Well, I will tell them, but there's just one thing I want to say first. I did say on the last podcast that we would be doing the draw for the Haunted Yorkshire book by Nick Tyler on the next episode, which theoretically would be this one. However, this one is actually being recorded a day after we recorded the last one. So it's actually going to be on the one after this, okay? So on the next podcast, promise you, episode 61, we will do the draw for the Haunted Yorkshire book, which is signed by Nick Tyler, the author. All you have to do is leave us a good review and then email it to us at mail@weirdwackywonderful.co.uk, or follow us on our Facebook page, which is Weird Wacky Wonderful Stories Podcast. Just look that up and find us. Follow us on there, like our page, whatever, and we will automatically enter you into the draw.
Okay, so back to what I asked you ages ago. What's happening today?
So on this episode, we speak to an author and researcher we've had the pleasure of speaking to on 2 previous occasions on the show. She's the author of about 23 books by my count, many of which are bestsellers on subjects like the paranormal, conspiracies, ancient knowledge, unknown mysteries, and cutting-edge science. She's an ex-MUFON investigator, has appeared on big shows like Coast to Coast AM and History Channel's Ancient Aliens. She's a regular contributor to magazines including New Dawn, Fate, Paranoia magazines. She's a member of CERT, the Community Emergency Response Team, and has her own production company called Where's Lucy Productions. And I feel like after that list, I need to be adding and a partridge in a pear tree. On Instagram, she's the queen of memes. Please welcome to the show, Marie D. Jones.
Did you just call me the queen of memes? I like that.
You're the queen of memes on Instagram. I loved that one you did the other day of the pig lying down, just totally splayed out.
Oh, yeah. That's me most days. Yeah, I like that. I'm going to add that to my resume. Queen of memes.
Do you know what? It's funny because Bella actually had a pig, and a little bit of synchronicity here. Its name was Lucy.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, my gosh. I always wanted a pig, a little pig. Maybe someday. My Chihuahua might not like that, but we'll see.
The pig I had, it used to open the refrigerator and the dog loved it. Loved the pig.
Oh, my God. Partners in crime.
Yeah.
Oh, my God.
Yeah,
They're
really
very
intelligent.
smart. And
Yeah.
I guess they're like cleaner than dogs and cats.
They
so.
are, yeah. Yeah, they are. Very, very
Funny.
smart.
Yes, too smart.
Well, we're obviously going to be talking about your new book today, which is Celebrity Ghosts and Notorious Hauntings.
Yeah. Oh, this is a fun one. And it's getting a really good reception because I think people are shocked by just how many stories I have managed to cram into this one book. And then what's funny is then people start telling me stories that they know of. And I feel like I'm already getting enough material for
Volume
part 2. It's just amazing. And, I really, like, the publisher asked that I focus on the United States and Canada. And I did. I mainly focused on that, but I also included some outside, like haunted castles and things like that. So I honestly, there's probably two more books, if not more, worth of material. You really start to realize how many haunted locations, ghost stories, and urban legends
Yeah.
are out there when people go, oh, you didn't include, or oh, by the way, in my town we have got this, and this. And it's like, oh, let me write this down. Let me write this down.
Well, I noticed that you include, talking about the fact that you include people from around the world as well, you include the original cure for the headache, King Henry VIII.
Ah, what I was asked to do was write about celebrity ghosts. And I thought, well, to me, celebrity ghosts don't just include Elvis Presley, Marilyn Monroe, and the movie stars and rock stars and pop stars. Certainly, they are covered in the book. But I wanted to include historical ghosts because I think they're just as much celebrities in their own right. And to me, a celebrity ghost is just somebody who's well known. Believe it or not, there are people who see ghosts of serial killers. So that kind of falls in there too. But yeah, Henry VIII, his ghost has been seen, probably along with one of the wives that he beheaded. Her ghost has been seen as well, headless, of course.
Oh, yeah.
So you have a lot of really creepy stories like that, happened elsewhere outside of the United States, especially the haunted castle section. That was really a lot of fun to find out, Europe and England and Wales and Scotland and, oh my gosh, Germany and Austria, all the haunted older historical buildings like castles and forts, and that was really fascinating. America, we're still kind of babies in our history, but we've got our battlefields and we have the White House, which is overrun with ghosts. But yeah, I felt like, oh, I can't leave out some of these amazing stories that come from across the pond.
When you had the stories of the headless entities, were they ever carrying their heads like they do in the Scooby-Doo cartoons?
Isn't that funny? Yes.
Really? Oh, right.
Oh yeah. And in fact, so let's see. There was a headless figure reported from moving from the Queen's house to the Chapel Royal of St. Peter, where her remains were buried. She's one of the wives, and she carried her head. She wore a cloak with an empty hood, so she was faceless, and she held her head under her arms. And that's actually something that you hear about quite a bit, especially if somebody's been decapitated. It's like they didn't want to leave a part of their body behind. I don't know if I would, if I were a ghost, if I would really care about that, but I guess maybe you do. It's interesting because it does show that even after death, we are still in some ways attached to our bodies, and we don't want to, like, if you get a foot cut off or an arm. I mean, there have been urban legends too of ghostly apparitions and entities that are holding a limb. They're missing a limb, but they're holding it in their hands. It's almost like they're not quite ready to cross into the light, and they're maybe still hoping that they can get the missing part reattached somehow.
Yeah, I don't know whether there would be any surgeons in the ER that are going to tackle that one.
Well, yeah, I don't think so. But yeah, so actually that was Anne Boleyn. The ghost of Anne Boleyn is the headless one.
Right.
Here in America, we have the Headless Horseman, Ichabod Crane story, but there are quite a few that I kind of categorize them more as urban legends, which the word urban doesn't really mean anything because a lot of these happen in rural areas and suburbs, you name it.
Was Ichabod Crane actually supposed to be a true story?
Right. And that's what I like about urban legends. So urban legends, as opposed to like a straight on ghost story, with urban legends, you always start with a nugget of truth, either a real person or a real event, a real situation, something that actually happened. But it's been so embellished and retold, and oftentimes you really have to do a lot of research to get to the core, exactly who was this or what exactly happened. They're almost like fairy tales or folklore stories that get built up around something factual. but they're fun. To me, they're like, it's like doing a puzzle, and trying to get to the truth. And sometimes they're interchangeable, and that an urban legend will be a ghostly apparition that has just a really unusual story attached to it. One of the interesting things that I found in the research is that a lot of urban legends are the same no matter where in the world you are. So let's say the Lady in White. I'm sure you guys have heard a million Lady in White ghost stories. And I've just, in casual conversations that I've had with people, in different states here in the United States, in different countries, they have their own version of the Lady in White, who usually is wearing something more Victorian era, but sometimes has a really modern, pretty, like a party dress on, always seen either weeping or crying, wandering along the riverbank or near a body of water, but also she is a very popular ghost hitchhiker. So the Lady in White is often seen in different parts of the country hitchhiking. And if you pull up to stop to try to help her, she just vanishes into thin air. So I thought that was really fascinating that some of these notorious hauntings are very similar no matter where you go. And kind of makes you wonder, how many Lady in Whites are there? Is it something psychological that we're manifesting? Like a weird collective vision or something?
Well, I've read somewhere, I can't remember where, but that a lot of the colors are actually sort of like archetypes for certain things. Or so the Lady in White, like you said, is usually hitchhiking, and then the Lady in Black is seen, and she's got her own.
Yeah, like around graveyards,
Yeah.
cemeteries,
uh,
those kinds of things. Yeah, she seems a little more morbid, I guess you could say. But I like that. I think, yeah, they can be archetypal symbols, because a lot of times the Lady in White stories come down to a woman who was betrayed by a lover, jilted at the altar, or something really tragic happened. Her child died. So she's sort of that innocent, mourning, grieving symbol.
yeah.
And the Lady in Black, maybe her situation involved things like murder or trauma of some sort. And she's found in the darker place like graveyards, the cemeteries. And I mean, I think that that's a really interesting thing. Very rare do you hear about a ghost, a female ghost wearing bright colors like blue or yellow or red. Usually it's like white or black.
Yeah. And it's interesting because you don't hear about men in white, or men in
Monks.
black.
We were speaking to Mark Rees on the last but one episode before this is going to air, and he was talking about things that have gone on in Wales, ghosts that have been seen in Wales and different sort of curious things that have happened in Wales. And he mentioned to us about the fact that these white monks are seen, dressed in their white clothes, whereas most monks of the day would be dressed in sort of a brownish sort of garb. Yeah, exactly. But the monks that wore white were actually sort of the ones that would be helping out. They wouldn't be sort of like true monks, if you like. Even though there was a lot more real monks wearing the brown, it's only the ones in white that tend to be seen. So I don't know, maybe it's something to do with the frequencies that we're seeing them on, maybe.
Yeah, it's interesting. And maybe it has something to do with the fact that they themselves were more spiritual, or maybe more advanced, spiritually, that they were able to then reappear, as a ghost or an apparition, and actually be aware of the fact that they have appeared to someone. Which, a lot of times ghosts are just imprinted images that just seem to be repeated patterns, somebody walking and pacing back and forth, and they really don't know or don't behave as though they're being observed. And then you have other ghosts that know they're being observed and actually may interact with the observer.
Yeah.
So you kind of wonder, there must be different kinds of ghosts, obviously. Like, I think, there's different kinds of UFO sightings. Why can we not apply that to ghosts? We've got imprints. We've got full-bodied apparitions. We have stuff that looks sort of like plasma, doesn't really have a human form. We have things that only turn up on thermal imaging devices, and we have ghosts that actually communicate or interact. We have EVP, where it's just auditory. So it seems like there's a lot of different things going on.
Mm.
With the celebrity ghosts like Elvis and Marilyn Monroe. These are two ghosts that so many people have reported seeing, but they seem to be more imprinted on the locations. And they're seen in locations that were important to them, maybe their former homes, where they're buried, favorite hangouts, places that they like to be, like with Elvis in the recording studio in Nashville, Marilyn Monroe at the Hollywood Roosevelt Hotel. So it's like their ghosts can pick and choose where they want to appear, but they seem to be very contained in that they're not interacting with people who are observing them. They're not trying to, communicate and throw stuff at them. So the historical ghosts seem to be more of the imprint variety.
So if it's the sort of imprint variety, like you said, more like the stone tape theory, would it be possible then, do you think, to have the ghost haunting two different locations at the same time?
That was one thing that really threw me. I mean, I've been, doing this for quite a while, and this is the first time where I thought, wow, Elvis has been seen all over the place, and he's been seen in different places at the same time. And somebody brought up a really funny point that really I had to actually think about. And they said, well, maybe you're seeing the ghosts of some of the Elvis impersonators because they loved him so much that they went and haunted the places that their idol would. And, that very well could be true.
Yeah, could be.
But Marilyn and John Lennon, and there's other Abraham Lincoln, and there's other ghosts that you get the impression they travel or they move around. Then it gets you thinking that maybe this has more to do with us as the observers perceiving these ghosts rather than them actually being physically in more than one place.
It goes back to that tulpa thing, doesn't it? Where you...
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. And especially with famous people, because like if the guy down the street dies and he just sort of passes in his sleep, his ghost might appear to the people that knew him, his family, loved ones. But when you have somebody on the level of a John Lennon or, a famous movie star, pop star, athlete, what have you, president, senator, a lot of people have emotional investments. You see how we get with our celebrities. A lot of people become obsessed, which of course I don't think is healthy, but it's like we know them. It's like we're a part of their family. And that does make me wonder if when they die, like Michael Jackson, when they die, we're not somehow manifesting these apparitions out of a weird need to, be able to say, well, they didn't really die, or they're on the other side and everything is okay. And so, yeah, I mean, I think that that's as good an explanation as any other.
Well, I know people never really thought that Elvis died. You heard all about that. Well, I mean, he'd be pretty old now.
Yeah. He just wanted to be left alone.
Yeah, that he didn't die, that he just went out of the public eye and wanted to be just a normal person. Did people actually maybe see him for real? Because it'd be some weird thing like, oh, I saw Elvis mowing his lawn or something,
Yeah. Well, there was one story that a lot of people saw or claimed they saw him at the Burger King that he liked to go to in his later years. And it kind of makes you think, why do ghosts haunt certain locations? Why do ghosts haunt graveyards and cemeteries? It's just their bodies are there. It's not where they died. It's not a place of great positive or negative emotion for them where the initial trauma might have occurred and they're still trapped in that trauma. Certainly, if we have a choice and I were a ghost, I would be at the beach. I would be at or watching my loved ones or popping in on my son. Hey, how's it going? So that always made me wonder, and I do believe that we are half the equation.
Yeah.
We as the observers, our expectations of where we think ghosts should be, our imagination, our attention and focus, yes, indeed, there very well could be these ghosts and apparitions that people see. But it's almost like a virus. It's like contagious
Yeah.
because when you're getting reports that everybody is seeing these things. I'll give you guys a really creepy example of that sort of viral contagion is Slender Man. Now, Slender Man is a totally fictional entity that was created as part of a sort of horror story website, a creepypasta, if you will, became very famous when people actually started reported seeing this entity. And then here in America, we had two teenage girls stab a third teenage girl because they said Slender Man told them to.
Yeah, we heard about that over here.
Yeah, so there's another one called The Rake, Rake. The Rake, if you Google it, you'll pull up all kinds of pictures. You'll say, oh my gosh, I've seen reports of that, and on paranormal websites. Totally fictional character, same situation, part of this, what I call fake lore instead of folklore, but somehow takes on an actual life of its own. And then you have people reporting that they're seeing it. What the heck is going on? Are they lying?
Funnily enough, I read a post on Instagram just today where somebody said that they saw the rake.
Oh, you're kidding.
I'm
so see,
dead
it's
serious.
Still going on?
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay, so does our, getting back to the tulpas, does our collective brain or imaginations or consciousness, are we creating this stuff? That to me is almost more fascinating than if it's an actual creature, jumping out of the woods.
Yeah.
Because it doesn't seem to be. It seems to be almost interdimensional, maybe. So are we opening the door somehow to let these things through so that they can manifest here? We can perceive them? Or are they out there all the time and we're just not focused on them? We're not paying attention.
Well, I know there was a report that the day Michael Jackson died, people outside or went to the Neverland Ranch, to pay their respects. And I know that people claim to have still seen him walking around in the house on that day. Now, yeah, exactly like you said, was it that the collective consciousness? There was loads of people there. They were all thinking about Michael and they were looking into his property, trying to see in. Did they see it because they manifested it, like you said?
Exactly. We have no way of knowing how much of this we're triggering or instigating. And I believe, as if you look into quantum physics and the observer effect, we almost have to be part of that equation.
They say that we're only using a small percentage of our brain and our abilities as humans. I wonder if, that is something that I heard one time about how all jellyfish came from this one jellyfish. And it just broke off, but it did have a collective one consciousness sort of thing,
That's kind of cool.
The thing is, we all came from one thing, or two things, but we all did. No matter how you want to look at it, we all started somewhere. Even if you believe in God or whatever, he did make Eve from Adam's rib, right? So that's one thing. So I don't know.
Apparently.
Just a thought.
I'm still with the aliens on that one.
Yeah, no, I know, but
Carl Jung talked and wrote and taught, and is really known for his concept of the collective unconscious and the archetypes being symbolic of the universal mind. And we're all connected into that collective unconscious. So they're very well, these ghosts and entities do sometimes have an archetypal quality, in that we all know what a ghost is. You could go to any country on the planet and they're going to have some type of ghost. It might not be called ghost, but they will know exactly what it is. And I have a hard time not believing that the collective mind and consciousness is not behind it. I think that we're strong enough that if we are all expecting to see something, we will see it. Now, maybe not everybody. I know that I've been on some paranormal ghost hunts, if you will, where I never saw a thing. And I tend to be kind of skeptical, daughter of a scientist, But the guy standing next to me is like, oh no, it's right there. It's right there. And that also got me thinking that maybe as individuals, our physiology is involved. So for example, somebody who has different levels of brain chemicals or hormones, or they're a different age, or they have a different blood type, or what have you. Maybe some of those things can explain why someone sees something and the person standing next to them doesn't. So there's so many different mysteries here to try to solve.
That's
Yeah.
an interesting one, though. I'd never really heard about that before, but
It makes you wonder, really, whether someone who is skeptical is just that person you were just talking about who maybe always stands next to someone who sees it but never sees it themselves.
it's like a gene.
Yeah, and it could be something as simple as the pharmaceuticals you're taking or what you had for dinner, because our brain chemicals we have the same chemicals, we have the same hormones, but we have different levels.
Different
of
levels.
them.
Yeah, absolutely.
Well,
Right.
the other night I saw a mechanical spider in the bedroom, and I woke myself up actually talking about it, going, "Look, don't you see it? Look!" And of course, you were just like,
yeah. I didn't even register that. I thought, yeah, there's definitely not a mechanical spider in the bedroom. I'm good.
Well, we hope not.
Yeah.
I know that they have those little mechanical mosquitoes and flies that are like teeny tiny drones.
yeah.
With those spy cameras. Maybe you guys were being spied on.
Hey,
See?
actually, you might be onto something there, because
be.
some of the subjects that we cover, we could well be.
It could have been a
Exactly.
spider
Well,
with
if you see
8
it again, just
prosthetics.
smash it. If there's a little camera inside, you'll know.
Yeah. I'll definitely be getting my swatter thing out. We got one of them electric shock, like tennis racket things. I don't know if you've ever seen those.
We don't really have them back home.
Yeah, you don't have them back
I
home.
have a good old-fashioned fly swatter.
Yeah.
Oh, these are brilliant. You've got a
Never
little button
seen
on
it.
the side, and it electrifies the whole thing. And then when you swipe at something, it swipes it and it electrocutes it. It's fantastic.
It
Oh
looks
my
like
God.
it looks like a tennis racket.
Yeah.
That's actually good in case somebody breaks in your house. You
Yeah.
don't have a gun. Just
Yeah, because it doesn't
swat
feel
them,
good
and
when
it's like taser.
It's brilliant. They'll leave the house with one side looking like a waffle.
They will never come back to your house
No,
again.
no, definitely not. Now, I know that you cover the people, if you like, that haunt, but you also talk about some haunted locations, one of which really interests me, and that's the Stanley Hotel, the hotel that actually inspired The Shining, Stephen King's The Shining.
That is one of those examples to me where what came first, the legend
Yeah.
or the hauntings? And that's another perfect example the reason why I use the word notorious is because they're well known, and they can be places where, negative hauntings or poltergeist activity or what have you, or positive, but they're notorious in a sense that they're known very widely and often in a negative sense because they're scary to so many people. But with the Stanley here in San Diego, we have the Hotel del Coronado and the Whaley House, with these really widely known hotels, motels, inns, what have you, prisons, asylums, sanatoriums, you name it. There's so many places. Is it that they are truly haunted and always were? Or is it the attention that has been put upon them, what has created the ongoing alleged paranormal activity? Because again, I know people that have gone to many of these locations and not had anything happen at all. And I know other people that came back and said, oh my God, my hair was tugged and somebody kicked me. And on the 5th floor, somebody was throwing pebbles. That, for some reason, is a big one, pebble throwing. Who knows why? But I've heard that so many times, especially with like hospitals, abandoned hospitals, sanatoriums. I always wonder if maybe that has something to do with children throwing things, to try to say, I'm here. But that's, a lot of these places have become wonderful tourist spots too. And they have their haunted tours. And so, half of me thinks, yeah, okay, fine, they may very well be. And the other half thinks, well, it's almost like, the haunted houses that you go into at Halloween that are all just set up to scare you. But I can't say. I have not been to the Stanley, but it's like 50-50 with people that I know that have been there.
It's interesting how we all love to be scared.
Oh, I think it's fundamental to our nature. And I think it's also a way for us, ghosts and ghost stories and hauntings, we get to vicariously experience fear
Yeah.
without ever really getting hurt because it's very, very rare, except in some poltergeist cases or exorcisms where somebody says, the ghost beat me up or hurt me, or you might get some little scratches on your body as their way of saying, hey, we're here. But I think it's just like going to those creepy haunted houses at Halloween. We live with so much fear in our everyday lives that we almost need an outlet to get
Yeah.
that fear out. And that's why we love this stuff. It's like a safe outlet.
Well, it goes back to those chemicals that you were talking about earlier in our bodies, because obviously it gives you an adrenaline rush, doesn't it? You speak to
Absolutely.
people that are police officers and firemen and all the rest of it, and you say, how can you do the thing that you're doing? And you'd know this as a CERT member yourself. Why do you do these things that you do? And they say initially, the first thing they say is, well, because it helps people. I wouldn't like to think of my father or mother or whatever being in that situation without someone to help, so of course I want to help. But when you start delving deeply, they say, well, yeah, the adrenaline as well. If I have a slow day, I really notice it. I notice that my mood is so much lower when I've had a slow day.
Yeah, I think your body just gets addicted to that, high cortisol levels, and that in itself, high cortisol levels, high adrenal burnout, and lack of proper melatonin production so that you're experiencing insomnia. And some people have such bad insomnia that they have hallucinations. So our bodies and our chemicals and our own health could be contributing to some of the things that we perceive. I don't like to say see because we might not actually be seeing them so much as perceiving them. And that again explains why somebody standing next to us doesn't perceive it. So, yeah, definitely. Another thing, too, is I think really when you get down to the bottom of all of this, is we want to know that there's something after we die, even if it's ghostly and scary, and we sort of have labeled what we think happens to us after we die as being this ghostly activity that, we're no longer physically manifested in full form. We're see-through, we're ethereal. We float around. We don't necessarily have to walk on the ground. People say, oh, you're wearing robes and white flowing gowns, which is associated with the idea that maybe you've gone to heaven or the other place. So I think that this is our way of processing the fear of death and the desire to get proof that there's another side. I think people that see their loved ones after they die, that can be very comforting.
Yeah.
Way more than frightening. I mean, unless you hated your relatives, that's a very comforting thing. It's like, oh, I miss them. I wish they were still here. Like with a lot of celebrities, people that love Elvis and John Lennon and all of these famous people, they still want them to be here. But seeing the ghost is a comfort. It's something that they can take with them that's comforting.
Yeah, and I like what you said as well about the fact that, you'll be hanging out on a beach and that sort of stuff. It would be nice to think that you could sort of get around and do maybe the things you never got a chance to do. Mind you, I don't hold much stock in the type of tan you'd get.
At least you wouldn't get sunburnt
Don't worry
either.
about skin cancer.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. But yeah, doing the things that maybe you didn't get a chance to do, going and seeing the places you didn't get a chance to see. I'd love to go to like Machu Picchu or somewhere like that and have a look at some of these places. It'd be nice to think that your bucket list can continue after you've kicked the bucket.
The other thing that's weird, though, is it almost negates heaven in a way, doesn't it? Because, or maybe not, maybe it's what you perceive heaven to be. Maybe for you, that skipping and going all over the place and seeing stuff would be what you want to do. Maybe you do have a choice, but then
you told me if anything ever happens to me to come back and let you know, and all right, I'll send you a postcard.
yeah.
That would be interesting. But here, you bring up another good point, though, is if on the other side we have the ability to make those choices and travel freely, why are wonderful, beautiful places not more haunted?
Mm.
Why are always the same old abandoned houses and hospitals and the places that you would think that you yourself would never want to hang around? And that kind of plays into the idea that the trauma that occurred there, the energy was so intense that it was not able to dissipate, and it leaves behind that imprint on that particular location. And another possible explanation for all of this is if there are parallel or alternate universes that are, we're always being told there are parallel universes and other dimensions of reality. Well, are ghosts actually proof that people are alive in some of these other universes or realities, and we're just getting glimpses of them? And maybe they're doing the same with us. They're getting glimpses of us on this side, and they're really not dead. They've just moved into another, dimension, another level of reality.
Yeah, a different frequency or something like that.
Right, exactly. So there's a whole host of different possible explanations. Why do you not hear about ghosts of certain celebrities at all?
Yeah.
Did they die and were they perfectly happy with where they were and they didn't want to come back? A lot of it doesn't make sense, but we like to try to make sense of what we have to work with.
Yeah.
So going back to your book then, tell us a little bit about the Ted Bundy.
Oh, you like the serial killers, huh?
Bella does.
Oh my God.
Bella's really into that sort of thing.
Of all the things to talk about.
Well, it's interesting though, because we have done a show ourselves, just me, Shelly, and my son, where we were just talking about this sort of thing. So yeah, it'd just be interesting to see how it ties into your book.
Well, the funny thing is with serial killers, you would expect, all of their victims die traumatically. So you would expect there to be a lot of ghosts around them. Ted Bundy's childhood home is said to be haunted by him, or people believe that it might be him. Basically, they hear, but it could be other victims too, because some people have seen the words "help me" on a basement window. They've heard footsteps, they've heard the word leave or seen it drawn on the floor. There's been furniture that seems to move on its own. They actually had a couple of pastors that came in and sort of did a home cleansing, almost like an exorcism, because they were doing Bible verses as they went from room to room to try to clean out the negative energy. They had Christian music going, but it still seems to be sort of a hotbed of that negative trapped energy. So not so much Ted Bundy walking through the house, but just that kind of awful foreboding, something really awful happened here. And there's, other serial killers that have that same situation where people report just feeling something foreboding, sort of a negatively charged energy.
Makes you wonder, hey, did these people who became serial killers, did they live in this house and did they see sort of stuff like that? And then it plays a part in them psychologically.
Yeah, it could be. I mean, who knows how these people grow up and become who they, become. But was one serial killer named Herb Baumeister who burned and buried 11 male victims on his farm. And he is said to haunt the farm, but people have also reported all kinds of sounds and moving things and dogs that growl at nothing, and new owners that came in and began having nightmares and electrical issues. So again, is that a situation where it's the serial killer's negative energy that's left behind, the victims, or maybe a combination of the two? I mean, certainly serial killers and their victims are both suffering tremendous trauma on both sides of the fence.
It's just the one you can empathize with.
Exactly. Yeah. Because I mean, we have a hard time empathizing with serial killers, but like you said, we have no idea what got them to that point.
You mentioned about the electricity and that sort of stuff being affected as well. Electricity doesn't, to our knowledge, have a consciousness or anything like that. So the electricity wouldn't be perceiving something So that makes it, certainly to me, makes it seem that there is something external that's actually triggering it, and it's not a perception from someone. Do you see what I mean?
Yeah, exactly. Some kind of electromagnetic shift or, and you hear that a lot with poltergeist cases
Mm.
where, the electricity will go off or computers will just glitch or what have you. And we know that, energy affects energy. So if those imprints of that horrible negative energy are there, I can see it affecting gadgets and TVs and computers. And there's actually a term, spirits in the wires, that a lot of times you'll hear people that are paranormal investigators talk about how often their technology and their gadgets just glitch on them. Sometimes when they're talking about the subject matter to somebody, that's happened to me too. It happened when I was working on a book about demons and the devil.
Ooh.
It was like, forget it. Every time I tried to get something done, there were glitches and I'd have to have my son come and fix some this or that. But yeah, it does kind of indicate that there are external forces. We also have evidence that there are the internal physiological forces going on. And, boom, when the two collide, we have paranormal activity.
Yeah. You mention in the book as well about some of the curses. For instance, you mention a curse surrounding the Matrix. Now, I don't know anything about that, so I am intrigued to learn about the curse surrounding the Matrix. What's all that about?
Yeah, that's not necessarily a haunting, but I found it fascinating that a lot of movie sets and, television show sets were haunted. And people actually died on some of them. Some of the most notorious is, The Omen and The Exorcist. Those are movies that you would expect. Poltergeist, one of the worst. The young actress that was the little girl ended up dying under very mysterious circumstances. So those are the types of movies that you feel like, oh, maybe you shouldn't make something like that. you're opening up a Pandora's box there. But with the Matrix, apparently, so the Keanu Reeves, who we all know and love, starred in the movie. While they were filming, his girlfriend, Jennifer Syme, died. She died later in a car accident, but she had earlier given birth to a stillborn child. This also happened during filming. We all know that Alea, the pop star, died 22 years of age in a plane crash during filming. Gloria Foster, who played the Oracle, died during filming. Reeves himself had a very bad motorcycle accident. He was in the hospital. The production ran out of money and he had to put in quite a bit of money. So it just seemed like right from the get-go, that movie, just had a lot of negative energy attached to it. And I mean, if you look at it, it's really a seminal movie about the government and mind control, all the kind of stuff the government would prefer that probably. I mean, that was a very controversial movie in that it was about waking up from sort of being asleep to all of the ways that we are trapped in the Matrix, and taking the red pill or the blue pill. And so if you think about it, even though it wasn't a horror movie, I think it was controversial enough that it maybe attracted either some funny business from, outside sources or just that negative energy. It just seemed like it was cursed, but in a different way that maybe something like Poltergeist, where you had, people feel like there was a negative presence on the set. Same thing with The Exorcist, The Omen, Rosemary's Baby. So yeah, it's interesting. But then you had a TV show called The Ghost Whisperer with Jennifer Love Hewitt, which was a very sweet, positive show. And they reported some ghostly activity too, although it wasn't negative. Nobody died, just doors closing and opening and things like that. So the spirits seem to be watching, whether it's a sweet TV show or a horror movie.
Do you think that it's almost going back to this whole Tulpa idea again, the idea that if enough thought is put into something, then it can almost manifest? Do you think that maybe there's an element of, if you're writing your book about demons, for instance, that suddenly something will more likely manifest when you're talking about the Matrix and mind control, that maybe things will start happening and
Like the law of attraction.
almost,
Oh,
yeah.
Yeah.
Firsthand experience when I was writing the demon book, I was terrified because I didn't think, when I went into it, I was a little concerned, like, oh, I've never written about something this dark before. It ended up being an absolutely fascinating book to research and write, but I had a number of very well-known people in the paranormal field warn me not to do it
You go
because they said I
looking.
would be attracting demonic energy. And so I was really scared. The truth is, nothing bad ever happened except a lot of computer glitches and cell phone glitches. And I remember also being told that one of the ways that the forces on the other side kind of communicate is by screwing up our technology, because our technology is so important to us. What a great way to make an impact.
Yeah.
Yeah, I totally think if you're on a movie set and you're making a really creepy, horrifying movie, that everybody is operating that sort of high adrenaline fear. Oh my God, is something bad going to happen?
Hmm.
Or we heard about the curses on, this movie 10 years ago. Could that happen here? And that brings the power of suggestion and expectation into it.
I'm not going to mention the name of the author or the book because of this situation, but which I'll tell you about now. But we were going to interview a lady about a book that she'd written on demonology. Within the book, it talks about the fact while she was writing the book, she collapsed and almost died.
Oh my gosh.
But on the day that we were supposed to be recording the interview, she messaged us and said, I'm really sorry I can't do the interview. My husband has now collapsed on the jog. So she collapsed while she was writing the book on the jog. And then on the day that they were supposed to do the interview with us, her husband collapsed on a jog. She hasn't been back to us since. So we're not going to... We're not going to push. We're not going to push her on that, and I'm not going to mention or say her name or the name of the book, because if what you're saying is correct, if this whole idea that we could give energy to negative forces by talking about them or whatever, then maybe we won't.
They say if you're going to go looking for it.
Yeah, definitely.
Other than all of the technological stuff, which really annoyed me because there were days that I couldn't write, like have deadlines to meet. I didn't have anything like that happen. And what I realized too is that, when you do a lot of research into, like, even writing this book, ghosts and the paranormal, demons and all of that, if you are sort of taking it from an objective, almost journalistic approach, I don't think that you're insulting. Like if these entities are sentient and they have feelings, you're not really insulting them. You're presenting information. I also felt like, well, I'm really presenting information that's already out there. So they're not going to come after me. They'll go after the original. But I think everybody has different experiences, because the people that warned me were people that I respect very, very much. And, they weren't joking with me. They were telling me, just be careful. Don't ever say the names out loud of the demons. And I never did. I'm not an idiot. I'm not going to go looking for it. But that book was really interesting. This one was a lot more fun.
Yeah. We can't wait to get our hands on it, because obviously we've read about the book to be able to obviously have this conversation with you, but we have pre-ordered it. It is available here in the UK on September the 12th. I presume it's available at all good bookshops, etc.?
Yes, online and off.
What formats is it in?
It is right now in print and digital, but eventually it will be audiobook as well. I think it just takes a little longer for that to happen.
Absolutely. Well, I know that from looking at the online reviews, etc., that the reaction to it has been absolutely brilliant. I know that you've got some really good quotes from some pretty interesting people who are in the know. We've got Publishers Weekly did you a fantastic review. Halo Paranormal Investigations did you a good review. The good reviews are coming in, so we can't wait to get our hands on this, and I'm sure that our listeners would enjoy it too.
It's a fun book, and I think it's really surprising to find out that there are so many haunted locations out there, and those are just the ones that I could fit into this one book.
Yeah, I mean, just to go through some of the names, you've got, obviously, as you said, Elvis Presley, John Lennon, Frank Sinatra, Hank Williams, Abraham Lincoln, Houdini, Marilyn Monroe, Prince Edward V. I mean, there's a whole load of people in here. It's a nice big cross section. It's not the usual, as you said, the white lady that everyone sees. This is
Right.
People
the
that
typical white lady.
exactly, people can identify with a lot of these because they know who you're talking about, so they can obviously picture the ghosts themselves, I guess.
Yeah, absolutely. It's really just full. I packed it as full as I possibly could. And again, there were so many things that I had to leave out that it just broke my heart. So I thought, well, if I get to do a second edition, but it just goes to show you that all over the world there are just so many haunted places, ghosts, urban legends, right in your own backyard. So that's really fascinating to me.
Absolutely. Where can people get a hold of you if they need to?
Well, my website is mariedjones.com, and I'm on Facebook, Marie D. Jones Author, Instagram, marie.d.jones, Twitter, Marie D. Jones. So basically, Marie D. Jones.
Yeah.
I'm all over the place.
Google Marie D. Jones. She's everywhere.
Yep.
Brilliant. All right. Well, thank you very much again for your time. Really do appreciate you spending the time with us and telling us about your new book. And obviously, as you know, you're always welcome to come back and tell us about your second edition or anything else you're working on in the future.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I'm so pleased to be on again with you guys.
You take care. Look after yourself.
You too.
Bye.
Bye-bye.